a very warm welcome to the session this afternoon, which is called Why 5G Matters. My name is Lynn, and I'm an executive producer at Channel NewsAsia. And we developed this fantastic panel and topic together with the World Economic Forum. It's estimated that possibly a third of the world's population is going to be covered by 5G. And that's not in the distant future. That is in just a couple of years, 2025. But more than that, 5G is supposed to be possibly 100 times faster than 4G. But at the base of it, some say that it's going to revolutionize how we live our daily lives. But is it really? The more skeptical will say this is really just a small increase on 4G. It'll help us to download our movies a little bit quicker. Let's find out what it really is, and I'm going to kick off by asking all of you sitting here about how much do you actually know about 5G? Now, those of you who think you know quite a lot, would you put up your hands, please? I see a couple of hands here, and none over on this side, and none in the central back. So the only people who know anything about 5G are over on this side. And they are clearly less than 1%. Okay, can you call up the first slide, please? What we did was, a couple of days ago, we asked Channel NewsAsia viewers, as well as WEF participants via tweet, to vote on this poll, this question of how much do you know about 5G? And this is what about 700 persons replied. A little, 44%, no clue, 45%, and lots, only 11%. So that means that, like all of you here, close on 90% of people who generally watch televisions, and even participants here at WEF, don't know terribly much about 5G, and yet all of you are sitting here. So let me kick off first with Hera and ask, why is it that we know so little about 5G, even though it's supposed to be something that's going to revolutionize our lives?
I guess I'm the wrong person to ask, since I'm part of the 11% here, I guess, that knows a little bit. So, Mikael, Bäck, I work for Ericsson, so I've been in this industry almost 30 years now, so living through the transformation from 2G to 3G. I was leading our activities in 3G to 4G to 5G. So I've seen part of these questions before as well. And I think what makes the question a little bit more broad than before is that we have for the first time designed a system that is really intended to be used for much more than people's smartphones that everyone would know a lot about today. So we designed a system really to be able to cater for that, but of course also the general need of digitalization of all the industries that we are talking about here in the fourth industrial revolution. So it's intended to be also a platform for when we want to connect everything that benefits from being connected. Therefore, I think it's going to be very important for all of you representing very different industries and also private people when it comes to, I gave you the example before we talked to one of the persons from the gaming industry, what they view of 5G, and for them it was really a revolution, because a lot of the problems they have today comes down to that they cannot guarantee a certain speed, they cannot guarantee a delay time or latency, and therefore the experience for all the online gamers becomes different.
So you don't shoot the bad guy or monster fast?
No, exactly, you want to know who you're shooting. So if you could basically on 5G then guarantee downlink speed, and you could guarantee a latency, then you don't have to download anything to the phone anymore, and you could give everyone the same experience. So for them it was a revolution. So I think there's a good chance that it will be a revolution for many, many industries around us.
For JD.com, though, it's not just about gamers. There are some very fundamental things that are taking place at JD.com, and these are going to affect ordinary people in your logistics warehouses. Could you tell us a little bit about that, Bowen?
Definitely. 我会在中文和英文。
Well, I will be switching between Chinese and English. We are talking about 5G and its importance. The reason that not too many people know enough about 5G is that being fast is one of the key attributes of 5G. There are two other outstanding capabilities of 5G. First, it's going to be tremendously enhance interconnectivity of devices covering 1 million devices within 1 square kilometer. So for the logistics industry, which JD is good at, we have lots of machines in the warehouses. We have autonomous and unmanned warehouses. If within each square kilometer we can support connectivity of 1 million devices within our warehouse, all the things will be interconnected, and the cost of interconnectivity will be way lower than before. When we optimize our AI algorithm, it will be happening at a greater scale. Now we are optimizing AI at each and every robot equipped with machine learning and mechanic arm. But when everything is interconnected, the optimization will evolve from individual optimization to a group or en masse optimization, so that all devices with machine learning capabilities will be joined together to form a legion of robots, an army of robots. So it will be far more effective and efficient. And secondly, the end-to-end delay will be less than 1 millisecond in 5G. When you are receiving an IV injection in the hospital, when the needle pierces through your skin and you feel the pain, the 5G speed is 100 times faster than the response between the touch of the needle and the moment you feel the pain. When you perform a remote or a tele-surgery, low latency is an absolute requirement. With 4G, some of those requirements cannot be met. So I've talked about inter-device interconnectivity with the optimization of smart devices, opening up huge spaces. Second, low latency could offer usability in many more mission-critical applications. But I have not addressed your question per se. Why so few people know about 5G? Because of lack of clear understanding about the standards of 5G. For amateurs, they are listening to stories about 5G instead of the concrete benefits that 5G will deliver.
And a whole lot of GSMA, you represent so many, a trade association, all these mobile operators. What are they saying to you when you say that it's going to connect everything?
Yeah, it is. I was amazed when I see almost 90% of people actually didn't know much about 5G or not at all. Because as a mobile operators association, we work with over 750 operators, and currently over the last few years, we've already got 120 operators roll out their 5G plans. And we talk about 5G daily. So it is really great to be here. I mean, to be with some people who actually don't know 5G that much. 5G can do a lot, and JD just had a very good illustration of how 5G can do with faster speed, lower latency, and you can connect so many devices together. But what we say, 5G actually matters because it is the largest consumer technology in this globe on Earth, because by 2018, end of 2018, we have 5 billion unique mobile users are using 2G, 3G, 4G networks. And now we're talking about upgrade this technology into 5G. And that is why it matters. It matters to 5 billion people, right? And yes, probably my mother would say, why 5G matters? Because it's okay, I'm on WeChat with you, I can see you, I can do video calls, I can talk to you, I can reach you, and that's enough. But she said that when we had the 2G, and even before 2G. And I think many people still remember beepers, and she could find me through that. So it's kind of interesting when we start talking about what 5G can do at the early stage, when 70 operators across the globe started talking about, I'm going to roll out my 5G. And even right in this country, when 5G license is already being granted to 4 operators, but the services haven't been online immediately, and the network is not ready yet, to tell you the truth. And my concern, and the industry I represent, is the trillions of money they're going to invest in this network, and how can they get the business models and get the money back. And thanks to JD, and you've given us hope, and you're waiting, and I hope you will pay for that services, right?
Now that was
Yes?
a very good point.
Absolutely.
Please say yes.
The largest consumer technology in the world. That's a very, very interesting phrase. Hera, what do you think from Cisco? Because I've actually seen some Cisco studies that are, I wouldn't say pessimistic, but a little bit more, possibly realistic in their projections, saying who's actually going to end up being connected to all of this in a couple of years.
Well, Hera from Cisco here. I think why we have so many people not knowing 5G definitely tells a story that we're not doing a good job. So what I'm trying to do today is basically, maybe we use more layman's terms. Usually people take a look at the technology and they talk tech. It doesn't really matter to people's life. So if we can bring it down into applications like Jing Dong and Bowen had mentioned, that's very easy to relate to. So if I may, 5G definitely matters because it impacts how we work, how we live, how we learn, and how we play. So Mikael talked about the gaming, which is how we play. So the immersive experience is definitely mind-boggling. How the fast speed can do, not just about downloading Netflix since you can watch more movies, but it's the response time. You can get that customer experience that you always long for as a consumer. I want that immediate feedback. By the way, real time is already too late. We need in the moment, at the instant. So that playing, right? Work, Jing Dong already mentioned, I won't belabor that. Just imagine the advanced technology can help any manufacturers to be connected with their supply chain so that the goods can come to your door very efficiently and you don't have to pay an arm and leg for it. What about live? We mentioned about grandmas. Will my grandma use 5G? Hell yes. I mean, this is the biggest consumer. Cisco forecast, our projection is by 2022, 70% of the world's population will be using mobile phone. That's why Sihan was mentioning this is the largest by far the consumer product, right? So we have to embrace that. So in terms of living, cars, connected homes, how many of you actually go home and use your mobile phone and then fire your rice cooker? Not now, but you will. Maybe tomorrow you can do that. It's smart appliances is already available. Your smart refrigerator can tell you that your milk needs to be replenished. All these are really everyday things that we don't pay attention, but this is what technology comes to play. And then learning, my favorite subject. Connected schools. You can actually compete with and compare your homework with different schools. You can use your learning trajectory to see how well am I doing in my math test. So all these are available with 5G. Now, latency, this is my favorite topic as well. Not because of the nerve, but basically, if you want something, you want response right away. I think 5G definitely can help with that. Let me just share an example that what we did in Cisco. 2 years ago, we used a technology and combined with our partners. We tried to isolate and identify poachers in South Africa we save rhinos. So basically, after 2 years' time, 96% of the poachers were trying to hunt rhinos were identified by us, so that they stopped doing that. I mean, just imagine, in the past, before this system, every day, 3 rhinos got killed because of these poachers. So with technology, with the surveillance that we have, with the very, very low latencies, with the AI and also big data, we can basically monitor and catch people. I mean, then our children will have a wild life that they can enjoy. Now we are passing that to elephants, to tigers in the Asia. So, I mean, this is something that I think we should talk more out, so people will be more aware of 5G.
Well, that's surveillance used for the good. Towards the end of the session, we'll talk about surveillance that maybe is not so good. But let's see. Now I'm going to give you a chance to ask questions. We're going to do this several times, so don't worry. This will not be the sole chance that you'll get. But let's throw it open now to the floor. And I'd like to see if any of you have some questions already. Since you know so little about 5G, I'm going to be very disappointed if we don't see a show of hands. Yes, I see a gentleman there at the back already. They'll be passing you a mic. Could you just identify yourself quickly and make your question short,
Okay.
please?
Hi, my name is Sam Adamayo. I'm a young global leader from Ethiopia. My question is, when 5G is being rolled out, would it increase the existing inequality that is in the world when you have countries that could afford to roll it out faster, provide products and services that are going to be much better, be it in education and play and services and work, and all of a sudden the gap between nations, would that increase? Are there ways to bring about that gap, and especially from GSM being the organization that monitors all? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll start with Sihan then as well.
Yeah,
a very
that's a
valid question. Will it increase the differences in inequality?
Thank you so much. That's a great, great question. The reason I say that is a lot of organizations, including GSMA, predict that this 5G network will be deployed in urban centered and centralized areas, where the rural areas and how we can really bridge the gap. And the reason I want to say this is because actually 4G, and in some areas 3G, 4G will coexist with 5G in the long run. And also, when today 5G is becoming such a hot topic, when you think 5G is so imminent, and it's actually right at my doorstep, and especially in a country like South Korea, US, or China already got the spectrum ready, license ready, even the network ready, or the services are provided. It doesn't mean that it is actually everywhere, and then you can use it. It's very, very early stage, and GSMA predicts it takes 7 years and 5 3GPP meetings and releases to actually connect 10% of this world population.
But although you say that the 4G is going to exist with the 5G, but the transmission sets are completely different. It's going to be a totally different thing. Will Ericsson continue to produce 4G transmission stations? I mean, because otherwise are you going to be doing both so that different countries, even countries that can't afford 5G yet, will still be able to buy 4G?
Absolutely. No, so just to comment on the question as well, I think I have maybe a slightly more positive tweak on this as well. I think it's coverage is, of course, the important part, and then you have lower frequency bands and other ways to do that, as you do for 2G and 3G and 4G. And we provide a lot of solutions to really try to cater for that when it comes to possibilities to use solar power or whatever might be the limitations. So I think coverage is the thing to get there. Then new technologies is as often as it could be a way to increase differences between countries. It's also a chance to leapfrog in many cases. We have seen that in cases where countries have actually leapfrogged by being proactive when it comes to regulations if you look at what's happening in Rwanda now with connected drones and so on, I think they've been using technology to actually leapfrog something that hasn't even happened in Europe yet and so on. So I think it can be both. It's very important to have a regime that helps development in terms of clear rules for spectrum handling, security, whatever, so the players know what to do with it and so on. But on your question, we still see people with 2G phones today. I think the last 2G only phone is just now produced, because the cost of some of the older technologies is always a little bit cheaper typically because of the enormous scale. And you still have a lot of 2G built into some of the early machine-to-machine home alarms or kind of water distribution systems and some of that. But there is no big new build-out of GSM systems. 3G a little bit the same. LTE is now the mainstream. 4G is now the mainstream technology. So all the smartphones you're using normally here is with 4G. And we believe that already up until 2024 or something like that, 4G will be the dominant standard in the world due to device cost and device availability more than the networks. By that, maybe 60% of the people could be covered by a 5G signal, but still device cost and the pace in changing out devices will lead to that 4G will be there until 2025 or something as the major spread technology. So we will, and then 5G is the first system that is really designed to be based together with the 4G system. So it's actually utilizing the same algorithms. You can build coverage if you have low frequency bands, which is good for coverage on 4G, and then deploy 5G for peak capacity on top of that. So they're actually built to work together for a foreseeable future.
Bowen, I see you have a point.
Yeah, 我完全同意刚才那。
I actually totally agree with what the gentleman has mentioned about the coexistence of 4G and 5G in the near foreseeable futures.
Of accessing 5G. But I want to raise another point, as a contrary point. The adoption and the deployment of 5G actually going to increase the fairness in the world. Let me be more clear with two examples. 一个例子是我刚才讲的那。
Actually, one of the examples that I want to give you is about the remote medical sensor system that has been deployed. As far as we know, that in southern part of China, we have already realized the remote surgery in the remote areas in southern part of China. As you know, that the very high-level medical experts are mainly working in the first-tier cities. So that is why a lot of the rural population do not have accessibility to the high level of the surgery. So by utilizing such a remote system, they would be able to accomplish a very successful operation or surgery in southern part of China. If it is not a very good example, I would like to give you another example utilized by JD in the AI, which is actually my team. As you know, that the Winter Olympic Games is coming very soon. If you watch a video of snow skiing, perhaps you didn't quite realize that some people are actually the expert of the ski athletes, so we wouldn't be able to know whether there are any differences if the video would be played in a way of the high definition and low latency, so that they would be able to create such a very tailor-made video stream for the very high-level professionals of the ski audiences. So we would be able to decide in some of the broadcasting in what kind of elements are we going to amplify some of the snapshots, and in some specific moment are we going to replay it, and etc. So the very high profile and very professional ski audiences would be able to enjoy your program as much as possible. I think these types of things can be only enabled and empowered by the 5G technology. I believe it will bridge the gap.
That it's actually going to be better when it's all tailored. The young gentleman who asked the question.
No, that is a wonderful explanation. Really appreciate that. just a quick addition to that would be, in putting in the capex, the infrastructure, is there a limitation in the first place? Once it's in, yes, absolutely, it could bridge in that gap. But in getting that capex, it's not just between different countries, but even within countries, as you were saying, urban divide and the rural divide could magnify, because you still have a whole lot of places in the world right now that still do not have mobile coverage in rural areas. How can you address that?
Yeah, that's going to be big. But before we go into that, can I just bring up, could we have the next slide, please? Because we actually again asked viewers as well as web participants this thing. 5G is A, and we gave them these 3 options. Just an upgrade from 4G. Now, interestingly, lots of people thought it was just that. It was just an upgrade from 5G. A game changer, which is what most of you on this panel would say, only about 27%. And then interestingly, with all the discussion that we've been having, especially out of the United States, only 22% thought that it was a political pawn. So I should point out that Huawei was invited to this panel. Unfortunately, they were unable to come. But this is an interesting, I think, aspect that ordinary persons, non-normal persons, like myself as well, we see it as being only an upgrade from 4G.
Yeah.
So why is that? Hera, why do you think, again, we're back to the, a lot of differences in society, the rural-urban divide. Is it going to be insurmountable now with this rollout, how much it's going to cost? And therefore, we're going to end up with some societies that are going to look like something fantastical, something out of, a movie, Real Player One. And then some societies which are going to look like something out of the 20th century.
Well, I see that slide very positively, because at least 51% of them think it's faster than 4G, meaning they know, which is good. And then 20-some% is game changer. So we focus on that 51% first. 4G is about connectivity. 5G is about connecting the unconnected, meaning we're putting a lot of things on the network, not just devices like phones. We have a lot of sensors as well. So basically, to me, I feel very pumped by looking at the stats that there is future for 5G. In terms of the urban divide, I think I agree with Bowen. I think this is something that we can use for the betterment of mankind, because with technology, that's what we can do, is to narrow that urban divide, narrow that income, using and leveraging and harnessing the positive things about technology. So I'm 100% support that.
I saw that there was a lady who had a question over here on this side again. This side of the room seems to be very active. Oh, I see there's another lady here as well. Okay, we'll take you directly after.
Hi, my name is Ayla. I'm a young global leader from Pakistan, having absolutely limited and absolutely no knowledge about what 5G is. First of all, I would like to ask that in terms of technology, when it's deployed, a disruptive technology, when deployed in developing countries, the impact is much faster. Mm-hmm. What we've seen in Asia as well as Africa. Is there a thought process going on? Are there any collaboration discussions going on to make the technology with the availability of financial tools to make it more affordable? With some kind of combinations with perhaps there could be funding made available, and at the same time the technology manufacturers bringing down their costs. So that's my main question. And on the sideline, just a very short one, again, not knowing much about it. 5G, you said it's going to connect everything. So are there any environmental or health concerns around that? Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot of questions, very good questions. Let's do the cost one first.
Yeah.
Can it be provided more cheaply, Ericsson?
I can start with the cost one. I saw it coming. So I think there is a couple of elements to the cost. First, when it comes to the infrastructure providers that is building the equipment in Pakistan or where it might be, what we are doing is that we are spending a lot of effort to make sure that this can be an upgrade from the system that you have. So basically, equipment we have delivered from 2015 can be software upgradable to take away from the cost from building new stuff if you don't need to. I think that's one thing. Then, of course, everything, when capacity goes up 10 times, the overall cost of the equipment goes down because it shrinks in size, and the power consumption goes down dramatically. So a lot of operational cost also goes down with that. You modernize the equipment, basically. Then, of course, there is a lot of cost that has to be handled in a good way from a political point of view. So as I said, what we see now is that you have a little bit of a digital divide with the countries going first now. You have more than 1 million users in Korea, you have US, you have China coming up now, Japan, and so on. So it's very important also to have a support from regulators and government to maybe avoid excessive spectrum costs and other things that is usually as much money as the equipment for the operator. So there are certain things we can do that we really try to do, and there are certain things that others need to do. I think specifically one good example about this is the next World Economic Forum event after this one is actually WEF in Africa. We will go and talk about, I think to a very large extent, this topic. I think this is one of the main topics done in many countries where you have partly the same position as you might have in Pakistan. We're discussing how to cover in an efficient way. Is there different models to finance equipment and so on, with or without governments, NGOs? So I think that is a typical question that is, I think WEF is a very good foundation for having that discussion.
Sihan, GSMA, have your mobile operator members been asking governments to make it cheaper? So when they bid that it should be cheaper, they want support?
Yeah, of course. Like we say, many countries are still at 3G, 5G era, and the investment, including in China, Chinese operators' investment in 4G hasn't fully recovered yet. But in terms of, actually go back to that question about, as a globe, you know, the new technology emerged, and we recognized it will benefit the mankind, benefit our society and economy. We would advocate to government regulators and to different industry users to actually support. So we actually commend Chinese government's decision on free use of spectrum for 3 years, which really speed up the development of China's 5G network for sure. And in many other countries, there are bidding or very high price. And we, from the previous Gs, we actually know that will hinder or even stop the development of deployment of the new technology and the mobile network. And the world is like this. When mankind enter into a new generation, and we say 5G is not just a upgrade of 4G. It's actually very revolutionary in terms of impact on different industries in the world and in our economy and society. We must not forget those people who are not covered by mobile network. We do have some mobile for development programs helping those developing areas to get access. And we use the best practice in the other areas like mobile money, mobile payment, mobile identity, and many other digital services we learned from the developed areas and apply or even support or put public funding into it to support developing areas or unconnected world. But what I want to say, the beauty of 5G at the moment, for those of you who don't know about it, it's actually not just about consumer technology, which will change how you gaming or watching videos or others. It is actually transformative in terms of in terms of industries. Not long ago, it's only last week, we had a digital leaders program. We have business leaders from various industries including transportation, financial services, consumer electronics, logistics. They came to a mobile show and said, I asked myself, have I come to a wrong show? Probably we can ask JD.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's right.
about 5G. But he's an expert, so he probably will say, yes, I should go to a mobile show. But previously, many other industries really have no idea about mobile communication industry, or as a consumer, you do use a faster social networking kind of apps.
Bowen, can I ask you that in two ways? So first question for you would be, is this going to change JD.com's bottom line? In other words, will 5G make you more profitable? And secondly, is it going to change the life of a JD.com employee? So,
OK， so 首先让我本人
First, let me clarify that I'm not an 5G expert, rather an AI expert.
when 5G becomes reality. So now speaking from a JD.com's perspective, 我们确实是在各种
Indeed, on various occasions, from testing to deployment, we have done a lot. In our Beijing headquarters, we were among the first in Beijing to deploy 5G in our campus. And in collaborative productivity and AR, VR testing, we are enabled by 5G within our campus. So 5G is changing and enabling much of our work. Second, at the production side, we are using 5G on our logistics. We are building up the first 5G-enabled logistical experimental pilot park established in Shanghai to be operational by the end of this year. We firmly believe we're paying a lot of attention to 5G. That said, we're having a very interesting discussion, and Ling has kept mentioning the public expectation for 5G and the gap in understanding. Let me offer several observations on that. Let me give you an analogy first and foremost, like 5G versus the first generation iPhone. Before 2011, before Jobs created the first iPhone, you can ask him why smartphone matters. He would have said you could use it to go online or to search your emails. So from this perspective, as technical people, we need to deliver 5G first and foremost.
的 gap。但是第二个角度来讲，我觉得公众的知情权。
Second, as the question has indicated, we need to talk about whether there's any health effect of 5G on health.
是在用武器和 iPhone。
Well, let me give you another analogy between 5G and iPhone. As a technical person and AI expert, I'm a little bit worried.
And AI together, the sooner the better. My concern is the following. So, unlike iPhone, nobody in this world knows besides people from Apple, Steve Jobs cooking this. 武器呢 is something, but nobody really sees it through. So, 我其实觉得像 people like
for guys from Ericsson, they have a lot of knowledge.
这个不会成为already promised on the delivered. 所以我觉得从这角度来讲，我觉得其实我们在做武器的时候，其实压力应该比 iPhone 要大很多。iPhone 是一个 breakthrough.
So iPhone was a breakthrough. Yes, 5G is another breakthrough, but there are very high expectations pinned on 5G. So, companies like Ericsson is under a lot of pressure. I hope 5G performance will be up to the promises as soon as possible.
I think that there's this difficulty that perhaps 5G is promising so much that we really have to worry about whether it's really going to deliver. Because if I could call up the next slide, please. If you can look at what you see here, people's expectations of 5G are very, very high. 68% of the people who answered this poll thought that it's a force for good, and only 32 thought it was evil. So expectations are really very, very high about what 5G can do for us. And if I call up the next slide, please, as well, you will see countries need 5G now for economic development. And look, yes is 44%. 44% people think they do. The not sure's are 26, but the no's are actually a minority. They're only 30. So people are really expecting 5G to deliver not just something okay, not just something fun for gaming, but really to be this transformative force. So Hera, in addition to saving elephants, you've talked about us being able to be connected to our, our fridge, to our microwave, and all that sort of thing. But still, it feels a bit unreal. What about our daily lives in terms of going to work? Is that going to be different? Are we going to not have the same jobs that we have now because of 5G?
Yeah, I'll answer the question after I make a comment about the vendors. I just don't think it's fair doing the vendors a fair share by putting all the effort and pressure on vendors to produce a lower cost equipment. I really think that it will be a partnership. We need the government to work with us, we need the vendors, our customers, and our community to work together to implement and deploy 5G. So I just want to make sure that I have a chance to speak that. So in terms of whether 5G does the country good or evil, what are the applications we can use? I want to call out, if we don't use the 5G wise enough, we might create an environment that could be evil. So I would be quite provocative when I want to say something about security. Have you considered, when things are becoming connected, fully connected, things have become ubiquitous, immersive, and those are big words. So what it means, if we have something at one end of the device which is not secure, this will get populated among everything. So I think I would call out that, for us, we need to make attention that we are gathering the data, we are transporting data in a much more secure way. Otherwise, we will create burdens to the society and burdens to the consumers.
I think that's a very valid point, the dark side of 5G. Perhaps we need another panel to talk about that. But can I ask this young lady here in the front, could we pass her a microphone, please, to come with the question that she's been waiting to ask? There she is, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I am from, know about the 5G from zero also. My name is Wang Xue. I'm from Xinhua News Agency of China. After, listening lots of information about 5G, my question is, the first, how do you see about the development of 5G in the world, especially in China? Like, how will it start? It start from the developed countries to the developing countries, or it start from like the future of mobile devices to Medicare, or in wildlife protection, then to other industry fields, or I do not know about the map, okay? And my second question is also about China. How do you see about the 5G version of Chinese market? Okay.
So I can take the first question. I think we now start to have a better view on how 5G started, since it has actually started. So it's fairly obvious that the very first use case that is now deployed by the millions of users in Korea, for example, that is smartphones, like enhanced versions of what you have today. Working better, working faster, but the same kind of basic use case. That will be there for a while because you have 5-6 billion people that wants that. I think that will be a strong economic thing behind many other use cases. But then the whole idea to be able to share all the investments for infrastructure, for the chipset that goes into devices with everything else makes the cost fantastic in the end, because now we don't have so many alternatives to 5G. Before we had regional standards in Europe, US, Asia. Now it's basically 5G and you have different frequency bands. That makes it very, very good when it comes to scale in equipment, but also scale in handsets, telephones, the chipset that goes into the telephones that can then later go into equipment in manufacture or into cars and so on. So I think the whole scale thing will be super important. But I think it will start with smartphones and then go into selected industries. And we see things happening first in media, in automotive, maybe manufacturing, utilities would be examples of the first industries where we see investments going. But also geographically, and I think it's partly because it's well-developed countries in some cases, but also because governments have a clear view of things. So as I mentioned before, that we see things starting up early now in parts of Northeast Asia here, in US, parts of Europe, Australia, for example. But then you also have cases like, take Germany, for example, where the government is investing quite heavily because they have this industrial cluster around automotive and heavy machinery and so on. So there is an initiative called Industry 4.0 that has a lot of activities, for example, in Aachen, where they work with manufacturing industry, connecting and testing over, for example, our equipment for 4G and 5G to learn what kind of capabilities you can get, what kind of security you can expect, and so on, to work with these industries to speed up a development that otherwise could take many years longer. So I think some of these things will also be up to whoever takes initiatives. I think it doesn't have to be the more advanced countries and the less advanced countries, the West and in the East. I think we will have a mix, but I think forward-looking operators, industries, governments, regulators will have a huge impact on this.
Yeah, can I just answer your question about China's position? Because this is so important for China to take the lead in terms of 5G deployment. So they are among the first lead, for sure. And also, it is important because the adoption of 5G in China, so it will actually speed up the global deployment. I think probably Mikael would agree with me, because when you have the market scale, when you have a country like China, by 2025, they will account for 30% of the global 5G connections. And that's let alone the IoT. So China is definitely the largest 5G market in the world, the largest IoT market in the world. And in terms of AI, and also a very advanced country, so we can see huge potential China can do and contribute to the global mobile industry, and ultimately to the digitalization of the society and global economy. So it is very encouraging. And we see, and we work last week, we work a group of digital leaders who are CEOs and chairmen, and you mentioned Huawei, and Huawei's rotating chairman was there. And we talked about how different industries can work together and make the most of 5G. And that is the first digital leaders program actually GSMA launched in the world. So previously, GSMA launched a lot of programs in Europe. And now we have AI in Network initiative and task force, first ever in GSMA and launched in China as well. So what I want to say is I have to thank to the Chinese operators and the mobile ecosystem who help us to advance the 5G technology and network.
Bowen, I can see you want to jump in.
Yeah. So 我前面两位都已经回答了。
I believe that both of you have addressed the question of Richard. Now I would like to talk about the different sector and industry and who will be using and utilize the 5G first. First of all, I'd like to make a disclaimer. Let me come back to the iPhone metaphor. It seems to be infrastructure or the so-called the mobile network era. But if you just predict if there is a mobile network, which industry industry will be disrupted. Perhaps we would still want to go back to the location-based application. For example, either it is Uber or Didi, the Chinese version of Uber. So it is very difficult for us to answer it. Actually, we really need to see whether there is a disruption leader in a specific industry and get prepared to disrupt it, even though most of the surveys say that most of the people do not quite understand what does 5G implies. Even more than 50% of the people believe it is only upgradation of the 4G. But I guess everybody, at least in this room, are paying great attention what 5G is going to bring us. There are minds that are quite ready to embrace the 5G technology to disrupt a specific sector. Since I'm a technical person, my judgment is still coming back to the technology side. That is the high speed and the low latency and also the intensity of the connectivity. We would have to identify which industry would be mostly benefited from these three features of the 5G. For example, low latency and the intensity of the connectivity would be enable the IoT to be connected. So everything will be connected. So for the IoT would be the era of IoT is coming, especially with the number of the IoT devices increasing. So it would not only get more data, but also in the diversity and also sources of the data, and we would be able to extract more accurate data from the sensors. The more data can we get, the more powerful the AI will be. I believe there are some questions which has a very blurred boundary. With the 5G empowerment, we believe we can solve these questions and problems more easily. Let me give you an example. In the driverless or the autopiloting, I don't think it is quite a very promising technology because we believe it is a problem very difficult to resolve because the auto driving is basically dependent on the sensors, and a series of action would have to be taken. The car in front of me would have to stop, and then the second car would have to detect it, and then there will be a response. So then such a driver would be able to get such instruction and make certain actions. There will be a lot of latencies, but if it can be empowered by the 5G, all the devices would be interconnected. Once I would be able to detect that the car in front of me is slowing down, I would be able to take actions because of the empowerment of the 5G. We would be able to resolve the bottlenecks currently in the autonomous driving. So if the 5G can really deliver, the sky is the limit.
He says it's not about vehicles being, automated vehicles, driverless vehicles being perfect. They just need to be more safe than us fallible human beings. So if you can achieve that, you've already achieved a very great deal. Fewer people will die on the roads. So let's come back, though, to these questions that Hera had about possibly one of the things that we need to think about when we develop these fantastic speeds, these fantastic connectivities. And that is the question of privacy. Because will our privacy also be changed with 5G? Because now the 5G will not only be able to know where we are, what panel we're sitting on, even what seat we're sitting on, but it will even know whether I forgot to buy enough milk for my kids and my husband in the fridge. They'll know everything. And all that data will be there. You can argue that it would be good if it was anonymized, but will it be anonymized? So now I'm going to throw this question to all of you here. Would you be willing to give up a fair amount of your privacy for many of the now projected benefits of 5G? How many of you would be willing to give up your privacy for 5G? Oh dear, very few of you. So most of you, in fact, are pretty apprehensive. Maybe it was the way I formulated the question. But let's call up the final slide and let's see what other people who also were asked this question thought as well. And they thought exactly like you. They said they don't mind giving up privacy for 5G advantages. Only yes, 11%. The bulk said they were apprehensive about giving up privacy. So this is one of the things I'm going to now throw to the panel as our final question. And I now want you to take off your hats as people who are in the industry, but instead to ask yourself as a human being, would you be willing to give up this 5G, all these privacy things, in exchange for many of the incredible conveniences, from the milk right through to saving lives on the streets? We'll work it right through. We'll start with you, okay? Because, Hera, you were the one who asked about the dark side of 5G. You said we need to be careful. We need to think about it.
Okay, take my hat off. I'm a mother of 2, so I definitely want to know my kids are being taken care of. I really don't mind giving up certain part of my privacy to make sure that I have preemptive measures. The world is getting more complex and things happen in real time. So if I have more visibility in terms of predict what will happen or forewarn my children what will happen, I would definitely jump on the ship and do that. So to me, I am that yes portion.
You're willing to give up?
I will give up certain part of it. Of course, we go to Facebook to monitor our kids, right?
Oh, that's old hat already. They're no longer on Facebook. Michael, what do you think?
I think I'm somewhere in between. I'm using technology a lot, but I noticed with my kids that they are much more willing to give up a lot of things that I feel a bit worried about. So I think it's a generation question as well. And to me, it's not really 5G. It's everything that has already happened with Facebook and onwards, and AI and all these other things. So to me, it's less specific.
It's a general trend. It's not so much
less
5G
specific to 5G. But
Bowen, what do you think?
My answer to the question is absolutely not.
No.
So, no. But let me elaborate.
Yeah.
So, I won't call a 5G technology 5G if it does not protect privacy as much as any former Gs. So, I will call it 4.1, 4.2, 4.25, but I'm sorry. It won't be 5G until the privacy is 100% protected.
100% protected, okay. Sihan.
Right. Basically, my answer is no, unfortunately. But there is a big but. 5G is actually proved to be a more secure and safer network. However, there are so many devices connected to this network actually will have some weaknesses. What we need to work together is individuals, policymakers, operators, vendors, every single stakeholders on this value chain should protect our personal information. That's for sure. We shouldn't compromise our privacy. And in other words, we should put this in a safer hands, regulated and very safe place.
Who's the safer hands? Who are the safer hands?
Yeah, because of the 5G, everybody will be involved, and a lot of stakeholders, like I say. So that's why we launched our Digital Leaders program, because there's AI ethics as well, and for 5G, it's the same thing. So the world digital leaders should work together and to make our life a better world rather than a worse world, right?
I think that
one super short comment. We had a meeting on cybersecurity just before this, and then it was very clear that we have good security routines, we have regulations, we have a framework that we're developing together with GSMA, but that is still not enough. So it's such a broad question that we also need this kind of broader industry collaboration, not taking away the standards and regulations. Most likely we need something else on top as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, let's see whether or not this panel had any impact on your knowledge about 5G whatsoever. So, show of hands now for the same question. How much do you know about 5G? All of you who think that you know now a little bit more, at least, than when you came into this room right at the beginning 1 hour ago. Can you tell me, by show your hands to show that you actually have learned something?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I think we have probably a 50% there. So, ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much for being on this panel. And all of you, thank you very much for attending.